The conflict in Ukraine has been ongoing since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and pro-Russian separatists seized control of parts of eastern Ukraine. The conflict has escalated in recent months, with both sides engaging in military actions and tensions rising between Russia and Western countries. The conflict is significant for several reasons. First, it represents a challenge to the post-Cold War order in Europe, as Russia seeks to reassert its influence in the region. Second, it has the potential to escalate into a wider conflict involving other countries, including NATO members. Third, and most ominously, it raises the specter of nuclear war, as both Russia and the United States possess nuclear weapons and have made veiled threats to use them in the context of the conflict. In this video, we will examine the conflict in Ukraine and its potential for nuclear escalation. We will also explore the economic impact of the conflict on Ukraine and the global economy, and the measures being taken by the international community to resolve the crisis. The conflict in Ukraine has its roots in the country's history as a former Soviet republic. In 2014, Ukraine was thrust into turmoil following the Ukrainian Revolution, which saw the ousting of President Viktor Yanukovych. Following Yanukovych's removal, Russian forces annexed the Crimean Peninsula, which had historically been part of Ukraine. This annexation was widely condemned by the international community, with many countries imposing economic sanctions on Russia in response. Since then, the conflict has continued to simmer, with ongoing hostilities in the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine, where Russian-backed separatists have been fighting against Ukrainian government forces. This conflict has resulted in the deaths of thousands of people, including civilians, and has led to a humanitarian crisis in the region. Russia has been accused of providing military and financial support to the separatists, a claim that Russia denies. The conflict has also strained Russia's relations with the West, with the United States and Europe imposing sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Ukraine. Overall, the conflict in Ukraine is seen as a key flashpoint in the ongoing geopolitical tensions between Russia and the West, with the potential for further escalation into nuclear war. The current situation in the conflict in Ukraine remains tense and fragile. While there have been ceasefire agreements in place, they have been frequently violated by both sides. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict have been ongoing, but progress has been slow and limited. Russia continues to play a significant role in the conflict, with ongoing support for separatist groups in Donbass and the annexation of Crimea. The international community, including the United States and European Union, has imposed sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Ukraine. In addition to the ongoing violence and humanitarian crisis, the conflict has had significant economic impacts on Ukraine and the surrounding region. The annexation of Crimea has resulted in a loss of territory and resources for Ukraine, and the ongoing conflict has disrupted trade and investment in the region. Despite the challenges, there have been some recent developments that offer hope for a resolution to the conflict. In July 2020, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a renewed push for peace talks and a ceasefire. Additionally, in February 2021, the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany met in a summit to discuss the conflict and potential solutions. The conflict in Ukraine has raised concerns about the potential for nuclear escalation. Both Russia and Ukraine possess significant nuclear arsenals, with Russia having the second-largest nuclear arsenal in the world. The annexation of Crimea and the ongoing conflict in Donbass have heightened tensions between Russia and Ukraine, leading to fears of nuclear conflict. The presence of nuclear weapons in the region increases the risk of accidental or intentional use. A mistake or miscommunication could lead to a catastrophic outcome, and the potential for intentional use in a conflict scenario cannot be ruled out. The consequences of a nuclear exchange would be devastating, with significant loss of life, environmental damage, and long-term health effects. The international community has expressed concerns about the potential for nuclear escalation and has called for restraint from all parties involved. Diplomatic efforts have been made to resolve the conflict peacefully and avoid the risk of nuclear conflict. However, the ongoing violence and political tensions in the region continue to pose a significant risk. The impact of the conflict on Ukraine and the surrounding region has been significant. The ongoing violence has caused a humanitarian crisis, with thousands of civilians being killed or injured and millions being displaced from their homes. Additionally, the conflict has had a major impact on the economy of Ukraine, with many industries being disrupted or destroyed. The fighting has also led to a significant amount of infrastructure damage, which has further hampered economic growth in the region. In terms of political fallout, the conflict has strained relations between Russia and the West. Many Western countries have imposed economic sanctions on Russia in response to its involvement in the conflict, which has led to a deterioration of economic ties between Russia and these countries. Furthermore, the conflict has also heightened tensions between Russia and its neighbors, particularly those in Eastern Europe. The potential for long-term destabilization in the region remains a concern, as the conflict has not yet been resolved. The ongoing violence and political tensions could lead to further conflict or even the potential for a wider regional war. Additionally, the humanitarian crisis caused by the conflict has the potential to exacerbate tensions and instability in the region. Therefore, it is crucial for all parties involved to work towards a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Looking towards the future, the conflict in Ukraine remains a critical issue in the international political landscape. Several potential outcomes exist, each with their own implications. One possibility is a peaceful resolution, involving a negotiated settlement between Ukraine and Russia. However, given the historical and geopolitical factors at play, such a resolution remains difficult to achieve. Another possibility is the continued violence and destabilization of the region, with the potential for further military escalation or intervention by outside powers. This outcome would have significant humanitarian, economic, and political consequences for Ukraine and the surrounding region. International actors, including the United Nations, the European Union, and the United States, have all been involved in diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. However, their ability to influence the situation is limited by factors such as Russian interests and the complex history of the region. Ultimately, the future of the conflict in Ukraine remains uncertain, with significant implications for regional stability and global security. It is crucial that efforts to find a peaceful resolution continue, while also preparing for potential risks and consequences.